This is The Simpit. I'm your host, Sean Cole, but the real star of today's show, if you don't know him already, I can promise you, you're going to know him in the future, and that's Rudy van Buren. This is the guy who beat some of the best drivers on Earth in the world's fastest gamer competition, and he is one of very few people who are going to have an opportunity to maybe have a full-time job as a McLaren sim driver. Anyway, welcome to the show, Rudy. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, hello. Thank you for having me.
I want to get to the world's fastest gamer, but I want to get to know you a little first. But when I saw that race and watched the way it all played out in the qualifying and participated myself, I'm like, I have to meet this guy, because this had to have been, it was intense for me. I have to know what it was like from your end. But before we get to that, just a little bit about yourself. Obviously, your name is Rudy van Buren, and where are you from? How old are you?
I live in Lelystad in Holland. I'm 25 years old, living together with my girlfriend. Daily job as a sales manager, just going the normal 9 to 5 job kind of thing. Work out quite a lot of CrossFit hobbies around it, and then next to that I'll keep digging at sim racing.
Now, what got you into sim racing?
Well, at my 8th birthday I got a go-kart from my dad, and that ended up being an 8-year-long journey. When that stopped, you start looking for different things. I actually got into GTR2 on accident. At that point, didn't know online racing was possible, but still, I was completely hooked when playing it. First with a keyboard, and then with a cheap wheel, and you get into it. Well, that was kind of the start from the sim racing part.
So, when you played GTR2 and you were also go-karting, you're rather young at the time, was the GTR2 feeling like you were racing at night, or was it feeling like a game?
No, it was more like when the go-kart journey stopped. When I was 16, I started looking for a replacement, and that became sim racing. And then at that point, it was so new, the whole sim racing thing to me, that everything was realistic. The sounds, and you had the stereo system out loud, and showing your friends you could race on a computer as well. And that just got me hooked. Got into Race 07 a bit, and then being a massive LFS player for a few years. Well, we all know the story from LFS. That got into R Factor 1 at some point because the competition was there. Tried a bit of iRacing, and now ended up in R Factor 2.
I totally understand that path as well. When you first got into GTR, I mean, just knowing again what you've accomplished in sim racing today, I'll put you at that elite status. When you first started playing, were you at that level? Well, how long did it take you to get to the point where you were winning races against people?
Well, at first I didn't know it was possible to race online. It was like you get the computer on your desk in your bedroom with a cheap wheel on it, and you just enjoy it like that and run the championship mode in the game. It was around the Race 07 part that I found out there was online racing, and yeah, I've always been up front. I can generally say that. Not at the point where I am now, but like the regular top 5 guy. And when the LFS thing got going, I got serious with sim racing and got into setups and got a better wheel. And I know I'm one of the head guys telling that wheel's not making you quicker, but getting from like the cheapest Logitech wheel you can think to a G25 was already a massive step into the right direction. Going from plastic pedals to, well, we know the G25 ones, and then it really got going.
So you brought it up. We'll come back to other things later. But so, what is your current setup? You're one of the best. What do you use today?
I've got a about 5.5 years old G27. We actually run a dead zone for about 15% on the begin and the end of the pedals to cover the spiking in it. Apart from that, a triple screen 27-inch. And just a PC from nearly 5 years old. I run every possible setting on low in R Factor 2 to put on the triple screens.
Right. And what about the pedals? You still run the G27 pedals?
Yep, definitely. Like I said.
Any mods to them?
No, yeah, well, the only mod I put on is dead zones on the begin and the end of the pedals. Like I said, for us, no. It's no excuse. It's just what you're used to.
Yeah, that's a bad mod, though. Not exactly. But I mean, that's great to hear, though, because, we're in this era where people are spending thousands and thousands of dollars on their equipment, and I'll make the argument, I'm sure they enjoy it much, much more in terms of the equipment, not the experience of sim racing, but that it doesn't require that to be one of the best on earth drivers, which you've accomplished on a beat up old G27, as you put it.
Yeah, well, actually last weekend the Sim Racing Expo took place in Germany, and I was there. And obviously, when you drive the expensive sets with the servo wheels and the really expensive pedals and the seats and the frames, everything's mounted in, and the 144 Hz screens, it's amazing. It's top of the bill, and I don't think you necessarily get quicker from it, but being consistent will definitely help, especially a load cell brake. But once again, no excuse on that part. It's all about what you're used to. But there's some really, really cool stuff out there, but the price tag is quite big as well for it.
Yeah, sure. It is, and on the bang for buck, it's certainly not needed. Dogs.
No.
Okay, so again, getting back to you, the human being, just a little bit. What other kind of hobbies? I mean, I'm always fascinated the parallels that us sim racers have. What kind of interests and hobbies do you have in life beyond work and sim racing and real life racing?
Well, up to my 16th, it was all about go-karting. So it was either doing loads of cardio to stay on the proper weight, or being in a go-kart track or going to school. When that stopped, you kind of drop into a well, they say the black hole here in Holland, but you suddenly got a lot more time to spend than you were used to. You start doing everything that you should not, drinking, partying, girls, everything comes into play, and well, you just get into the flow of school, and in my case, I just got fat, and well, what else did I do? Not that much. I didn't go to a gym. I didn't do anything. I just worked and went to school, and that was about it. But about 2.5 years ago, I got my first contact with CrossFit, and that got me completely hooked. It's something I do for about 10 hours a week now, just to stay in shape and get even more fit than I already am, and that's the main hobby next to the work, because the schedule is pretty much 9 to 5 work, drive home, cook dinner, have a little bit of rest, go train, go to bed, and do the same thing over again.
Now, how do you weigh, that's a pretty busy workload on its own, full-time work and then a couple hours at the gym. How do you balance that and get enough time to be competitive on the world level of sim racing?
Just don't do too much. Make sure the time that you put in is good and effective, and it's not needed, at least not for me, it's not needed to practice hours and hours a day. I'd rather just get 30 minutes in one day and then another 30 in the second, and put it on like that. And it requires a little bit of planning to actually for example, I always got a race on Thursday, and then I know Sunday is the easiest day to prepare because I don't have work, and then just stick with it on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then perform on Thursday.
Sure. And some people, it seems that even over practice at times. I guess it's a balance between doing it well versus how much, and optimizing and maximizing that time.
Yeah, I think the most important thing for people is just to find their own method that works, because there are enough guys who do 10,000 laps and are blisteringly quick, and they do it like that, and they do it each race, and it works for them. But I'm not up for that. I'll honestly just say I'll get bored doing 10,000 laps for a race, and I know 10,000 is a really big number. It's actually it's way too big, but you get what I mean with big amounts of numbers that some people need. But it's just what suits the guy. Just take it.
Yeah, I understand. Now, before we get to World's Fastest Gamer, beyond karting, I know you've got a few different opportunities to drive various cars. How much has racing stayed in your life beyond karting?
About 1 year after I stopped go-karting, my dad got involved with a Dutch racing class involving the Lotus Super 7 light cars. They're actually called Westfields, but it's like K2M, Lotus 7, all same deal. And then you get close to the center of it, and after a year of just being a mechanic and helping drivers, I got my racing license at 17, and then I had the chance to do a few guest races, but since my dad was so close to the core of the competition there, it wasn't good if I was in the car, because if you get good results, it's always that the son of the boss is cheating, all that. It just wasn't good for the championship. But we could see I had the speed in the real life car, and that actually got me into the Formula 4 test twice, and were both times well, what can I say, really fast in both of them. So that was really good, but the budget required for such things is just ridiculous. So it ended there as well.
Yeah, I understand that. So obviously your father is very much into racing and probably been a big influence in all of this for you as well.
Yeah, definitely. If he would have not got me that go-kart on my 8th birthday, he would probably be driving around a Porsche 911 right now. But um, maybe it's the mistake that he made. Maybe it's the golden thing. But yeah, definitely. But before that as well, everything was racing. He was into racing. So for me, when I got my a BMX bike for my 4th birthday, it was putting cones on the street and racing around those. So it's always been in the blood. But the go-karting thing really made it take off.
Yeah, I understand. All right, now let's move on to World's Fastest Gamer, which I made a run at just to see where I stood. Now, R Factor 2 wasn't my normal everyday sim, so it took a little while to acclimate. But again, I quickly realized how much time and energy guys were putting in just to post times, and I fell very far down the leaderboard. Anyway, but getting back to you, you were very strong throughout the entire competition. I think that most of the people that you were racing against were putting in a lot more time than you were in preparation, it seemed, or at least posting laps, because the leaderboard was changing that rapidly.
Yeah, I think that some people definitely put in way more time, but even in that case, if people need those laps and that make them win, then well, good job to them. I should have practiced more. For me, it was lucky that the car was released so late before the first race because I didn't have the time to prepare properly because I just switched jobs and everything was just too packed to get the free time I thought I needed for it. So actually, for myself, for personal feeling, I lucked into the first qualification to get into the top 20 and then obviously winning that one, not even expecting it, but I was just hoping to get a top 5 and then, well, things played out differently that evening. And
for the final time, it's been a superb effort and I think that he's rightfully earned his spot in the top 5. A fantastic drive and rightfully deserved.
Here comes Rudy van Buren then across the line to take the checkered flag, and he is the first victor of the world's fastest gamer R Factor 2 round 1 qualifier.
It just worked, and then for the final I obviously had a bit more time. But even then, I'm not the guy that goes in and practices for 3 weeks straight for it. I just went in after the last race I had prior to that one, and that was the Thursday before, and I jumped in. Had a good Saturday full of practice, and I just kept up with it on Sunday, and luckily finished the job in the evening.
Well, and it's so amazing how tight that competition was when you got down to that final. I mean, it was like there's almost no difference between the front and the rear of the grid, but yet there was a difference by, measured in maybe thousandths of a second instead of hundredths of a second. But when you guys got into that race, it looked just amazing because you guys were running so tight, but it looked like it was hard to really get a huge edge at the same time.
Yeah, in the first qualification that I did, the draft effect of the car was like 0 effect. You could drive behind someone like 2/10 and you wouldn't gain anything on a straight. And they did a really good job of changing that for the final. Might even be too good, because if you entered the straight at 4.5 behind, you were on the guy's bumper at the end of it. Put that on top of the track they choose for the final, and you get a race where someone's not going to get away, because nobody's going to have that 4.5-5 advantage on race pace, and that clearly showed.
In that final race, it did come down to the ability to make a pass because you were not leading the way. Watching it, there are a lot of people in the live stream who are watching it who are waiting for the moment because you had that top 3 just running nose to tail. And from where I sat, I had no clue who was going to win because it just looked like that kind of a dogfight. Did you know when you were going to make your move? Had you been setting up that move? It looked like you had just been so patient, and then all of a sudden you were there, and I just wonder, how did that play out?
Well, with the start, in the first place, I jumped Jeffrey. Then we went side by side through T1, and we obviously didn't want to make contact because it was a long race, so you play it safe, and then he dived in front of me in the second turn. I needed every bit of brake on that car to avoid him there, but it all worked out. And then the whole draft thing kind of showed already, and you could see that he was struggling in the turns as well. So we've seen all the way through the competition that people driving one quick lap were definitely not always the best in race. This is a very big difference. So I knew I had the pace even without the whole draft thing, but then the problem starts. Like Silverstone National is not the most difficult track to hold someone off. So it was just about sticking behind, waiting, making sure that P3 wasn't overtaking me. Because normally when you're in P2, you get into this difficult position of either attack or be attacked. And, well, Nico then played it smart on that part. He was just waiting as well. You could see it because he had like the double draft. So we just kept going and going. And then suddenly Jeffrey opened up the gap. And I knew it was, well, actually, I say knew, but you don't knew. You just go for it at a certain point. You see it opening and dive in. It's either, well, crash or win.
We should focus on this for a second as we see the top three as again the Khabib move up the inside. This is for the lead of the race. Up the inside goes Van Buren. There's contact between the pair of them, and Van Buren's done it. And he's almost under attack from Wisniewski trying to go around the outside again. But Refill will hold on for second place, and with a gutsy pass up the inside of Brooklands, that could be a crucial move. Rudy van Buren hits the front at Silverstone National. That possibly, if he stays there, could be the move that wins in the final. That was
So what was the pressure going in? I mean, you seem so calm just talking to you, and I just think so. Going into that event, you know, in a strong position, you were obviously one of the favorites at that point, even though it was a closely matched grid. But how were your nerves at the beginning? I mean, before you even got on track, how was your night's sleep the day before?
Oh, that was all good. Actually, the morning of the race, you just took the dog and walked through the forest. And obviously, you think about stuff, but you can't change them, so why worry about it? If you got your own preparation going and you know you've got a decent race base, it's all good. And I was actually just worried about getting to the Super Bowl because I knew I could do it over one lap when the maximum pressure was on, but I was lacking a little bit of pace if in a 15-minute session where people had multiple attempts at it. So that was actually my only worry, to get into that Super Bowl. And I knew if I got into the Super Bowl, I had a decent shot at winning the thing. But when the 15-minute session started, I actually nearly hit my PB on the first lap out of a 15-minute session. And that takes off the pressure in a different way, because you know you just got the proper banker in, and actually that lap would have been enough to make it in top 5 straight away. We improved later on, but that first one would have been enough. But that if that would not happen, then the pressure would have been on maximum. But prior to that, it was just about, well, you think about it and you try to adapt, but the only thing you can do is just stick to your game plan and do the best job you can.
Sure. And at that moment, you had posted that lap. It meant you could just throw caution to the wind and you know, try to set a world record. You know, forget personal best, but a unbeatable lap time, which just you know is a great thing for a driver to have, that luxury. You know.
Yeah, well, we saw it in the practice as well before it. That was really close. There were like 15 guys within nearly 2 tenths. I've never seen it before, and obviously the track helped with it being a 3-corner track, but it was really cool to see such thing. I wasn't a big fan of the track choice prior to the event, because I was thinking, well, such a big event, get us a proper racetrack for the final, but I think for the whole scenery they created, they wanted a really, really tight final, and that's what they got, so all good on that part.
All right. How much GT or tin top car driving do you do in sim, usually? What's your normal preference in sim racing?
I prefer the Formula cars. But, on the other hand, the tin tops are usually more fun because it's like shorter and more races in the evening. I race at an English organisation called GPVWC. I race there on every Thursday, either Super League in the Formula cars, which has a bit of development going on behind the scenes as well, with little upgrades on the cars and get different kind of stats to the teams as well. So you get some extra management thing going on. And then the other week it's WTCC light cars. So I just move on from one to one, but pure driver-wise, I'd say the Formula cars are more fun. But during races, I tend to point to the tin tops because you can just run bumper to bumper and get close short racing. And they use the BTCC format, so we got like 3 short races on evening with reverse grid and weight penalties in and so on. So you never know what to expect, and you can't really prepare for that either. So you just show up with a car you know you're good in, and then have fun. And that's a different approach, but it's a fun approach.
Now, when how were your emotions during the race, and were you having fun during the race?
It's the world's fastest game one. Well, when I got into the lead, it was like 18 minutes to go, and then you start. I knew the lap count of the final, so I knew it was like 34 laps. Don't remember correctly anymore, but I knew how far we needed to go, and it's like you get to the point where you actually start thinking like, okay, if I don't win this, I either had some very bad luck with this connection, or I just screwed it up as a driver, because I knew you would be able to close the gap till the end. And obviously the pressure was there, but I could see on the Delta that when I exited onto the back straight with a little bit over 410s at max, then I was safe at the end, so I didn't need to block either. So at that point, I think every driver should do it, just stay relaxed and just keep ticking off the laps. And then he helped a few times with making a tiny mistakes and so as well. And you just get into the groove and get going with it. You just keep digging and don't watch behind too much.
Sure, yeah, the mirrors will kill you. So when you crossed the line and you finished, what was that like? I mean,
it's stupid, you know. I literally screamed when I passed the line and I wiped a tear from joy. And I know it might sound stupid for a sim racing game, but this competition could like be this life-changing kind of thing. So of course there was pressure, and then the pressure came out, and it's not like wiping tears for hours, but like the one tear from joy definitely came out at that point.
Hey, I could get teared up just thinking about it, just on your behalf. It's just amazing opportunity, you know. I guess, and again, I guess right now it still lies at just being an opportunity because we're not through with it just yet. All right, let's go. So your dad gets you into karting. You find GTR. You do some other racing and stuff with your dad, mechanic, the whole works. As you continued in sim racing, what are his thoughts of sim racing in general?
Well, at first he was like, "Oh, racing on a computer, bollocks! Don't need to do it." He tried it himself a few times, and at that point I still had one screen, and the graphics were like the GTR2 area, and they were not bad. But as a non-computer guy stepping into a single screen with probably not the correct field of view, with just making it a big pizza slice with everything coming too far, he couldn't see the corners. He didn't understand, and he definitely didn't understand the online gaming part of it. So he was like focused on school and quit the bollocks. But nowadays he's enthusiastic about it. In the triple screen he can drive it. He can sit in and just drive around for fun, and he's actually pretty decent at it. But yeah, nowadays he's up to it and asks how the races go and how the results are and if we need anything for it, for example. But yeah, bottom line, he's enthusiastic about it now.
And what does he think about the fact that you win a race and you now are going to have an interview with McLaren?
Proud dad. Just proud dad. What else can he be?
Yeah,
in Holland, it's been obviously we're at the McLaren video released, but prior to that, the national television has been here as well. And actually, next week there's coming in the local TV stations coming as well. So then, obviously, every movie goes around through the family and friends and so on, and they start to pick up a little bit what it's about. But I think it's still for the main public, it's really difficult to understand what this could mean or what the job actually is. Because if you could tell people, yeah, I could be the possible Formula 1 simulator guy, they're like, yeah, well, you get a controller then, a PlayStation. They can't understand the whole thing going on between the factory and the free practices and all those kind of things. It's really hard to explain, especially in such short videos or even just a text message. But along the way, they got a little bit more notice of it, and I think they'll still gain notice of it. But we all know it in November.
You've done some real-life racing and driving and things. You've done a lot of sim racing. Let's talk about sim racing in kind of a broad terms real quickly. But coming from both sides of the coin, how do you think sim racing is doing? I mean, you've been in it since GTR 2. Now we're at the level of R Factor 2, iRacing, Assetto Corsa, whatever your flavor is. How do you feel they've done in terms of growing the sims themselves? More the physics and the handling and the realism than the communities themselves.
They've come a long way. I was and I still am a huge fan of LFS because I thought at that point of time they were miles ahead of everything. They obviously been bypassed by now, but still I regularly just pop up LFS and drive around a bit and still get that core feeling of what comes close to a racing car. They don't have the backing to go into a proper competition and so on, but at the time I played it, it was really big. And now every sim has its own group of fans. It has its own plus and minus. I'd rather just pick a few things of R Factor and combine it with iRacing, and it would be like the ultimate thing. But even that comes down to personal preference, because we can all discuss the tire model from iRacing and I think from R Factor 2, but bottom line is it's personal preference. But they got a long way, and I think the amount of real life drivers playing all the sims shows how close it's getting. And in the end, is it needed to be 100% accurate? No, but just the general thing of driving around a track, getting the flow, even now with the new wheels that are coming up with the servos and the load cell pedals and so on, they can practice stuff at home more and more, which is basically save money to real testing. And nothing can beat real testing, don't get me wrong, but the first 10% of it can be done at home nowadays, and they enjoy it. They race against each other, they race against people online, and they actually get whooped, and they're like, what the beep, and they keep going and they get addicted. And it's fun for the online people as well to see big names from real life racing going on as well. Take iRacing, Formula Renault for example. Last year it was on daily basis you saw Lando Norris pop up, and then people are still like, oh, Lando's in the server. It's great that he's doing so, and he's quick as well in the sim. So that kind of shows that it's combining as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, what about on the setup side? In a real life situation, you come in, you have a performance or that you're trying to improve, or a handling error in the car that you're trying to cure, and you make changes, and then you get your cause and effect of those changes. In sim racing, how well do they do when you get in there and you're setting the car up for something as important as a league race or world fast game or something? How accurate and how sensitive are the cars to set up, in your opinion?
Kind of depends on what car you run. If we take the McLaren from the world fastest gamer, I think there were pretty different approaches possible to getting that car going, because you had a certain driving style, you could adapt a bit, and you saw people throwing it around really much, while I was more of the one being smooth, running a bit more rear wing and so on to get a different balance in the thing. But it all depends from mod to mod, how sensitive the cars are. But in generally, I think it's good. The changes that we make on the cars in the sim seem to be a bit equal to the real life thing. That's actually the most important. And if that means we need to do 2 or 3 clicks in game, whatever. It's just about getting the correct feedback from the right changes, and that seems to get closer and closer. So that's a really good thing.
And when it comes to running at that world level, how important is setup versus just driving talent?
Difficult to answer. That difference as well for each car. I think the McLaren, there was definitely something in the setup, but for example, not as much as there could be in a Formula car, because you've got all the wings and stuff involved. But setup is definitely the biggest part in getting comfortable around the track. So if you want to get, for example, if you want to get up to the top level, you need to be able to dial that car to your own preference and get something you get going with. Obviously, get up to a point where it's just like get going with it and get used to it. Instead of people putting every screw upside down and searching for something that's not around. But even those are things that you find out in your own process if you start screwing your own setups and so on. So just keep going at it. Absolutely.
Have you ever used VR much?
I actually tried it for the first time at the Sim Expo last weekend. Not a big fan of it yet. I could see the benefits of it when it starts going, but there are, in my opinion, at the moment, too many downsides of it. But to get a first experience with it was really cool.
When you're running in triples, how much do you find yourself turning your head looking to Apex versus like real life? And then was there any difference between how much you were turning to Apex in the VR versus like your triple screens?
No, actually, I'm actually driving the VR. I was thinking like, oh, you got to look to the Apex, because I was just moving my eyes and looking, because you're like, for example, you're like in a bowl. I was like, oh no, you need to really turn your head to look to it. So I was looking around a bit, but the thing wasn't mounted correctly to my head, so I was looking at the wrong angle through the glasses, so it was all blurry, and so it didn't work. But in general, I don't think I look that much to the Apex. It's like I could just chop off half of the side screens and probably don't even look at it. But
that's exactly how it is for me.
It's just eye candy having triple screens. I've actually had this year I had a race at Monaco with the Super League, and one of my screens died 2 hours before the race and needed to switch back to a single screen, because obviously 2 is not possible. But to avoid getting used to a different field of view, then, because generally on one screen you sit a bit further back so you see a bit more, I just kept the field of view on triple screen, just no side screens. Worked fine around Monaco. Just keep going.
No, I understand. When I watch some of the streams I do, and I run in triples, but I'm only broadcasting the center screen, and I'm like, I don't actually mind that view. It actually works. It's a little zoomed in, but it works okay for me.
Yeah.
Awesome. So, they were always tight-lipped about this McLaren thing, and it was a weird it was the biggest competition prize I can think of, maybe outside of Visa Vegas. A lot of the details of how they were going to do the whole competition, how the winner was going to really be chosen, it was all very vague. I'm wondering at this point, how much have they informed you of what the job would be at McLaren, or any of that, or is it still all a little unknown, and maybe opportunity will turn it into a bigger opportunity based on who wins and what they bring to the table?
No, at the moment it's all unknown. I've spoken to a few people on the expo as well, including a few of the finalists, and we're all just looking around. We don't know what's going to happen. During this week, we did get an email to give up our racing suit sizes, so they're going to do something with that, or at least want us to run a McLaren suit while in the simulator to get proper footage. And we know it's going to be the arrival date from us is going to be the 10th of November, and we depart on the 18th. But that's all we know. And there's been out a few things that will be driving real cars and multiple sims and so on. But those are things that just come out of their organization. But the real hard words, what's the job going to be like? How much hours a week? Payment, living, nothing's out. And I think we will get to hear it while we are there. But it wouldn't surprise me either if we're not allowed to share anything with the real world about it.
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, when I think of something like this, they've probably intentionally been quiet, but,
Yeah.
It doesn't change anything. It's still, greatest opportunity and prize. So when you think of an event like this, and you think of the Visa Vegas where you had $1 million up for grabs, you look at the ESL, and Project Cars is now, running in the ESL. Formula 1 2017 is now got some affiliation with Formula 1 and will, award a prize. iRacing has their acknowledged NASCAR champion plus the money, the world champion, and on the road side as well. A lot of money at stake. How do you think that's changing sim racing as a whole?
I think it's raising the level higher and higher. I think it's really good that such competitions comes around. If I look at myself, for example, I'm close to getting to the point maybe I should start spreading my view of sim racing, get involved in iRacing again, or even Project Cars, seeing what's going on with ESL stuff. But in general, just bottom line, you want to race where the competition is and where the biggest competition is. So on that case, it's really good that they start picking out these competitions. Because, for example, what Bona did last year with Vegas, it's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely, life changing even, and
Definitely.
I mean, at that point, you can start to make the argument that somebody is truly a professional in sim racing, not just pro level driver, but a true professional by the word of finances.
Yeah, I think actually if this whole sim racing thing keeps evolving like it does at the moment, and it gets somewhat close to the level of some of the big shooter games and so on, I think there are actually guys within the scene who are going to make their living out of sim racing for a few years. I don't think it will be many, but I do think in the short future it will be possible to do so if you just dedicate your whole week to preparing and entering the right competitions and make sure you win them. I think it's possible to get a living out of sim racing within a few years.
Right now, when I look at sim racing and the level of competition that's there, and the fact that you could have professional sim racers, but we're still not actually seeing many drivers from sim racing being given chances or opportunities in real life racing. Even though, I mean, gosh, Bono could have made more money in Vegas than a lot of professional racers will make in their entire careers, depending on how long they go. But we're still not seeing that pull or draw. Why do you think there's a reluctance from real-life racing to take a gamble on proven sim racers?
Because on the end, the bill has to be paid. and the economy at the moment is just not helping. You can see it in every racing class around the world. Maybe not in the China part because that keeps growing, but if you look in America at Indy cars, the teams are chopping down. Look at NASCAR, it gets more difficult. Here in Europe, the national classes, especially in Holland and so on, they're just basically gone. Every big Pro-Am competition has an amateur in it with a big budget, and they get a pro next to it to get somewhat decent result. So it's really difficult for a team to just get to the point like, okay, we've got one seat to spare, we just give it to a sim racer. He might be blistering quick, but bottom line, if the guy doesn't have the budget, who's going to pay for it? And well, I think that's the biggest part where teams run into. They would love to give us a few tests, I know that for sure, but even those tests, it has to be paid, and no one wants to stand up and just stick their hand out and we'll finance it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's relevant. I mean, outside like where it was a completely arranged deal, like with GT Academy, where they had the whole rides lined up, and that was continued marketing for Nissan, let's face it. So Nissan really brought the money to make that happen. And I think that's relevant, because even if whether you're a sim racer or just a karter who's making a name for themselves, that might not be enough in the current climate or economy, and how that translates into marketing and advertising and racing.
Yeah, you definitely have to be more than just a driver. For the Nissan thing, we got Wolfgang, right? He's like one of the examples that made it out of Nissan into a proper factory driver of Bentley. What he does is he's brilliant, but he's like one of the few as well who did it that way. But again, I think a sim racer has a decent shot at being quick instantly in a real car, but in the end, they're all going to talk about budget, because that's just the whole story of the whole racing thing. Now, we all know what kind of budget that a guy needs to get from karting to Formula One, so that stays the problem.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And hopefully the economy will turn and change all that. So, okay, I last question for you, and then I'll let you go. I've had a blast in, talking to you, but are you ready to move to England?
Definitely. Like I said, no, I've set that out straight. If all the details in the contract are right, because obviously you always got to know what you sign up for. And first, there's a very tough final where are 9 other guys who will be quick and have the same goal as me getting there. Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I'll be ready. Yeah, definitely. I'll just jump in the plane and go.
Excellent. Well, best of luck to you, and I really appreciate you taking the time to just give us all a little insight of what it takes to be at that level of racing.
Thank you.
So there you have it. Rudy van Buren, finalist in the world's fastest gamer. This is one of very few people who are going to have an opportunity to turn sim racing career into a real-life career working for all places McLaren. I hope you enjoyed this interview. We'll bring more interviews to you in the future. But for now, this is The Simpit. I'm Sean Cole, and I'll see you on the track.